Greetings, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to the Hometown Moguls podcast. My name is Ryan Yoder, and here I will be sharing inspiring small business stories from your own community. Please take a second to like, subscribe, follow, share, give a thumbs up. Anything that you can do to help support the podcast would be greatly appreciated. Now, please sit back and enjoy the show. All right, and we are all set. My friend Daniel, if you want to go ahead and take a few seconds to introduce yourself, chat about all the crazy things you got going on in the world and all the different businesses you're running and things you're juggling at day to day. We'd love to hear about it.
So thanks for having me on the show. It's awesome. Love what you're doing. My name's Dan Maffett, and I am a freelance content producer. I do multimedia advertising for a bunch of different companies. I also do, I have a shop that I own that builds resto mods. So you take classic vintage hot rods and you put all the modern technology in them. I guess that's pretty much the gist. The freelance aspect kind of covers a lot of stuff, but
yeah. Well, I mean, anyone that knows you knows that that's a pretty quick, watered down version. I mean, you have so many little facets of art and different things that you've been able to, bleed into as far as, obviously you covered the hot rods, but I mean, even the Hometown Moguls logo, you made that. And then we talked the other night about a side project I'm working on, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, do you just kind of follow where your interest is and then just whatever pops up, you're like, let's try this out? Or did you kind of have a game plan going into all this of certain things you wanted to focus on?
No game plan at all. Nothing. It was a vague understanding that I never really wanted to have a boss.
Okay.
I worked for people over the years, and I come to find that even if I took on the passion of that project that I was part of, no one matched the passion that I had for growing and doing things. And the thing of it didn't really matter. It was just that I wanted to do bigger, better things with whatever I was part of. And that if your passion exceeds the person you're working for, it drives a wedge right through the middle. And it shouldn't, because you think entrepreneurial, hire the person who does it better than you. But in this day and age, it's kind of hard, because you start coming up with ideas on how to improve, how to grow, and then they're like, whoa, slow it down. We're not that kind of place. It's like, yeah. Okay. So, I've read a book, and one of the things he said is, don't work 9 to 5 on someone else's dream and not come home and work on your own. And I was like, wow, yeah. So I need to be working on my own stuff. Yeah. And it snowballed, man. I went to college. I triple majored in ad design, multimedia, and photography. And then I ended up combining that when I transferred colleges to a degree in film studio production with a minor in multimedia advertising. So after I went through that program at Winter University, I kind of figured out, like, oh wow, all this stuff that I've been doing kind of on my own is a marketable asset.
Yeah.
So I started freelancing, doing logos for people, and I was one of the only guys at the time that could do video, photo, and design. So I was kind of like a one-stop shop. I could just talk with someone. They wanted a website, they needed a logo, they needed video, they needed photos, they needed all this stuff. I could do it all in one session, where they didn't have to go to a different guy and then another guy to try to figure it all out. They could just hire me, and I could just build them everything they needed, a whole branding package. So through college, when I first got out of college, I worked in the music industry just with bands. Like, that was my only clientele, was bands. You find out quickly that most bands locally have no money. I worked with a lot of them, and it was kind of like, yeah, we'll pay you as soon as this comes through from the label, or this comes through. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, that sounds fine. I trust you. And then you go a year without getting paid. It's kind of like, huh. Yeah, I got to shift
Yeah.
because it's not working.
Yeah.
Um,
So it, sorry. One thing that you touched on that I don't want to lose in my mental notes here that I want to grasp at was that seems to be a common theme when you hear people like your story where and you're one of the most laid back humble guys I've ever met, and so it's not like you're when you say you don't want to have a boss or you find it some friction there, it's not like you're being difficult to work with. It's just your spirit and your energy and what you desire as an end product is just far above and beyond what someone else's scope of what they expect to come out of it is. So I mean, is that something that you've always had? I mean, from just looking back to high school, like I know you always seem to have your own thing. Like you always seem to have your own way. You weren't worried about what other people were doing. Um, is that something that's like common in your family? Is that something that is just you personally, something you personally focus on developing to be independent?
I don't know where that comes from, honestly. You know, my dad's kind of like that. Um, I think if my dad didn't have 8 kids, he would probably be exactly like me, an entrepreneur and have his own business and all that. But he kind of put that aside for making the money for the kids, to
Yeah,
put us through school and all that stuff. So I 100% believe if he was not a father of 8, he would have his own business and do everything. But I'm the youngest of 8, so in that time frame where he had the most kids in the house, an entrepreneur was not a word that was used. It was
yeah,
kind of just, you had people that went to business school that had businesses, and you had father figures that went to work and made money for the family. Like that's all you had in the spectrum. Now, you Google entrepreneurship and it's, thousand, hustle porn quotes about,
yeah,
hustle every day and make it gold and
yeah,
I can't stand that stuff. Like I like I don't know. I just think that the entrepreneurship lost a little something when it became a fad.
yeah.
Because there's a lot of fake entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of fake information and people making millions on other people's struggle, and they never even get a dime of it.
Yeah.
But
So you mentioned a book. What book, out of curiosity, was that specifically created that change in trajectory for you? Or are there other books and resources that you found helpful along with that as well?
the first book I read, I don't remember what it was off the top of my head because it was a long time ago. It was probably right out of college that I read that one. But I mean, I think everyone's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of like that parallel kind of puts in perspective the mentality I kind of grew up with my family versus the mentality of someone's family who was very wealthy. And that's why that book does so well because it really connects the dots without pointing fingers. It says, look, this is a perfect way to raise your family. This is a perfect way to raise your family. It's just what assets you have available to you that make the difference in the decisions you make. Um, but I think Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of the ones that was really good. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck was really good.
I've heard
Um,
that.
yeah, if you haven't read that, I would read that one. That one's really good. Um, that has a lot in it. That just pretty much the name kind of drives it home. It kind of the man's arrogant, but he's arrogant to benefit his goals,
Yeah,
not to shut down anyone else's, but just to make sure that he's doing well by himself and not missing opportunities because of uh, being too proper or too business proper.
yeah,
Just being an opportunist almost. Because you have to be an opportunist to a point to be able to see a niche in the market and be able to capitalize on it, or to see a space where there's someone not doing a good job and knowing you can do better. It's I don't like the idea that entrepreneurs have to be cutthroat, but I do like the idea that you have to look at things almost tactically. You have to see and forecast where the trend's going to be, what's going to be popular, what's going to be marketable, and try to turn that into a benefit for yourself.
Sure. And I think that's a common theme that seems to come up nowadays. And not to get political or anything, but like in order to have that mindset, you almost have to be like on board with the idea of capitalism, but the what we view as capitalism is like what they call crony capitalism, or like taking it from being an opportunist to then being greedy, whereas like
Yeah.
you have the goal of, you want to follow, where you don't have a boss, you get to do what interests you, but it also benefits you and your family, provides a roof over your head, food on the table, stuff like that. But you're not going out being like, okay, how can I squeeze every nickel I possibly can out of each of these car owners that I'm, doing these modifications for, so I think you need that drive, like you said, but there is like a line of, you almost have like a moral base or something that has to anchor you down.
Yeah.
To where enough is enough. And, I got what I need for my family, and, I get the freedom every day. Cause I mean, like I look at someone like you, and that honestly is the goal for me. I'm not trying to be Jeff Bezos or something like that, but through talking to people like you and getting motivated by everyone that starts their own thing and finds that void in the market and fills it, there's a certain freedom there, and you can see, a pride that comes out of, I'm sure you walk through your house and you have things hanging on the wall that you designed, or there's a car in the garage you're working on. I mean, that's something tangible that that you created and it exists now. I mean, that must be pretty fulfilling, regardless of the dollar amount attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, that is, that's, and when you're in the middle of working on something or building something, it's very easy to not look at what you've accomplished with it already. And that was kind of something I would say early on, not so early on. It was kind of, and it's an entrepreneurial thing, like forest through the trees. You're working so hard to get a comfortable income or to get success or to do that. You have to really take inventory and reward yourself for what you've accomplished already. I had a friend that was working, trying to get his photography business going, hustling, shooting every weekend, shooting headshots, shooting models, doing everything. Every week he was just shooting before work, after work, like all kinds of stuff. And he was just, got burned out really quick in about a year. And he was kind of like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. It's killing me. I was like, okay, well, have you put a portfolio together yet? He's like, I haven't even had time. I said, okay, well, you've been shooting full time on top of a full time job for a year. Make a portfolio, review it, and decide what is your best work in which genre, and make that your full time. So you're not all over the place. Because if you try to please everyone, you're going to please no one.
Sure.
So, and he ended up going through the portfolio. And he's like, wow, these are really good. And he could see, because they were dated, how he progressed and all the changes he made and how much better he got as a photographer. And he was like, yeah, I need to do these headshots because these are like kind of my thing. And he ended up going up to New York, and he shoots in New York now full time.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. And, and one of the things I wanted to touch on too, that, you brought up, that I was going to bring up as well, is, I feel like it's ingrained in us from such an early age that you need to do the traditional thing of go to school and get a degree and this and that. And, I've said it before on this show, and I say it all the time, that I feel like it almost hit me at one point. I was like, I'm being trained to be an employee. Like at no point,
yeah,
like even if you go to business school, it's not necessarily ingrained in you, like the mindset and the skill set to like really venture out on your own. It's almost like, find a job with, a 401k and benefits and this and that. I mean, like being someone that works in and around, things that could almost be done, it seems like, without that fancy piece of paper from an accredited school. I mean, did you have prior knowledge and skill with some of the different software going in and everything that you had taught yourself before you even got to college, and you got there and you're like, all right, I already know this type stuff? Or
so I knew the base of some software. Like I knew how to edit video. Um, I hadn't done it professionally, but I think everyone grew up with a computer in the house that had like Windows Media Player or something like that. So like I had a Lego set that was a Steven Spielberg Jurassic Park stop motion set that I got like the year Jurassic Park released. And I made so many movies on that computer with that stop motion set. And so I knew the idea of how to cut things together. And when I was growing up, I was going to be one of two things. It was going to be a state trooper, or I was going to be a professional wrestler. You could not convince me I was going to be anything else. Growing up, those were the two things. If one didn't work out, I was going to do the other.
Yeah.
And then one year I worked security at an event. So I would volunteer for security with the Newcastle County Police and stuff like that. And I worked security. I think I was maybe 16 at the time, maybe 15. And I got to talk with one of the Newcastle County sergeants and told him what my plans were and everything like that. And he said, "Well, whatever you do, do not go to school for law enforcement." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're going to hate it eventually. And if you only have a law enforcement degree, all you'll ever be able to do is law enforcement." He said, "Every officer I know is trying to get out of it." He said, "So it's a great job. I recommend it to anyone, but have a backup plan." And that kind of shook me. And I was like, well, if every officer he knows is trying to get out of the police force, I guess I'm going to be a professional wrestler. So fast forward a year from there, I actually got VIP passes to go to the Legends of Wrestling in Pennsylvania, Valley Forge. So I went there. I got to hang out with Mick Foley, Bret Hart, the Dudley Boys, the Blue Meanie, like the Hart. Everyone was there. Everyone. And I sat down. I got to talk with Bret Hart, Mick Foley, and they pretty much told me the same thing. They said that you go to school first, get degrees, get what you want, and then try wrestling. He said wrestling is a love, and you will love it forever. He said, but it will tear you down by the time you're 30.
Yeah.
And they said it. He said it's worth it every minute of the day, but they said that it's one of those businesses that you don't do for life. You do as a passion, and then you get out. And they said you have to have something to follow. And I was like, well, I don't want to invest in something that's one gonna kill me way early,
Yeah.
and two, be perishable. So that just threw me through a loop pretty young, and I kind of was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now, but I know I like creating things. So let's stockpile as many skill sets as I can to create things now. And that's when I triple majored at Deltech, ad design, multimedia, and photography, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I learned photography, learned how to edit video, learned how to do design, the aesthetics of design. And one thing that happened there that's kind of carried me through, and I still keep this mentality myself now, is the director there, his name's Ron Pleasanton. He opened the first week of the first design class. It's like 0001 design class. And he opens it up and he said, "None of you are designers. You're all creators. And if I have one piece of advice to all of you, is that in here, you will never lose your sense of play." Said the minute you lose your sense of play, you lose your creativity and your drive. And I just heard that, and the words just resonated around my head. And for like a week, I'm just like, well, that's kind of how I've lived my whole life so far. No one's put it into words, but I've always had a sense of play. I've
Yeah.
always been curious or looked at something and never said, "Oh, I'm too old to even engage with that." I'm like, well, I will play with those Legos right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'll make something with it. I don't care, and to be creative and have a design thought and create of any avenue, you have to have a little sense of play, because you have to be able to think about it. And, I think one of the things that was very stark when I got into the employee world is the people that are running the companies have no sense of play. You know, all the places I went, they were just like, yeah, this is how much comes in, this is how much goes out, and as long as that number is higher than that, we're good. That's all I need to know. It's like, yeah, but you could do so much better. If you get creative and you do these things, you can capitalize and grow. And you know, a lot of people are just they just can't visualize it. If it's there's someone who got into it because they saw a void in the market and saw they could buy something for X and sell it for Y and make a profit, and that's it. And that's their formula, and that's what works. And it's good for them, absolutely. But there's a lot of luck involved with that too, not just being able to, create. If they were able to create and could think bigger, they'd grow consistently.
Now, with with your endless creation and knowing you and how much you plan for everything, I I know for a fact that you had some sort of character or theme or wardrobe or finishing move already planned out for your wrestling career. I can't get the image out, but what was your name going to be, or what was your finisher, or like what did you planned out as a character for your wrestling career?
So, believe it or not, I did not have a name. I never
Okay.
figured it out, never got that far. But my niche to get in was going to be that I did martial arts. And specifically, I did capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts that no one did on wrestling. Like it's a weird thing. Like it's Brazilian dance fighting.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I know what
so
you're
like,
talking
so I did that all through middle school and high school, and my senior project was on it. All about the style, where it came from, and all the slaves that they brought over from Africa developed this style in Brazil of dance fighting, so that the slave owners wouldn't know that they're training to fight.
That's
It
pretty
just
cool.
looked like a dance, but it's like it could be a really deadly and beautiful fighting style. So I learned it just because I loved Eddie Gordo and Tekken. And and then as I learned it and got better at it, I took Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just because it was kind of along the same vein, and
Yeah,
then same ancestry. And I was like, well, this is a marketable thing.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, um, I would love to see you do some sort of dance fighting now, because it's anyone that doesn't know you, or anyone that can't see from the picture of the video. I mean, you're a pretty daunting sized guy with a big beard, and I'd love to see you dancing around and kicking and punching. That'd be pretty amazing.
I don't even know if I can do it anymore.
No, when was the last time you
No,
tried?
um, probably years. I mean, like the principle is the same, so I could definitely do the what they call the road up. But um, I I got in a car accident 2 years ago and had to have spine surgery. So since then, my mobility is a lot less than what it was. So I don't know if I could still do it, but I will definitely give it a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good testament for the surgeon if your bionic back held up to you doing a backflip or something. You're kicking your leg up high in the air.
Well, and
No,
what's funny is the one guy that was the trainer here in Delaware, his brother um, was, I'm trying to remember his name, but he was like 6'2", like 350 pounds, just a really big, thick dude, flipping and cartwheeling and spinning. And I'm like, wow. And at that time, I was, when I graduated high school, I was like 5'8", like 150 pounds if I was lucky. Like I was really tiny when I was in high school. I hit my growth spurt really late. So like I was doing it then. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then as I started getting lanky and started getting tall, I started working out and got thick. And then it's kind of like, yeah, I guess I can't do that anymore.
so I'm trying to think of a way to like take all this information and all of your knowledge and experience and kind of boil it down for anyone that's listening that can use it and guide them. I mean, the biggest takeaway that I can think of in all of this is basically find what you're passionate about, which I've read plenty of places of, like you said, you can find a void of, you find this for X number, you sell it here in this market for this much profit, and boom, you have a business. But I mean, in order to sustain it and to be happy in long term, it sounds like passion is pretty key, at least in your business structure. I mean, is that pretty fair to say? Like, is
Yeah.
what advice would you give for anyone that's trying to pursue leaving that 9 to 5 employee trap that they found themselves in?
So, one of the books that I read that I really love is Chris Hardwick's book um, about improving your life, and he has a really good analogy in there where he says, if you look at a shopping mall, they have the huge title stores. They have the Macy's, they have the Nordstroms, they have J.C. Penney's, the big stores that pays their bills. Then they have all the little kiosks around. The kiosks are kind of niche, weird things that you wouldn't think of normally. He says your life has to be kind of like a shopping mall. So if you work a 9 to 5 that's paying your bills, that's one of the big title stores. What you do on the side, that's your passion project, is the little kiosks around the mall. So keep that 9 to 5 so that it funds what you want to do. And then if you put enough of yourself into a passion project that you really love and you really care about, it will eventually take up the title spot. It will grow and be the moneymaker for you. And then,
Now,
you can push that to grow it even further or start another passion project and just keep shifting that title spot until you're happy with where you are.
and in your experience, was there a particular moment, kind of like a do or die, like where you're like, you had these side projects, you had the 9 to 5 or whatever, and you were like, all right, now or never, like, let's make this transition? Or was it something that was very slow over time? Like, what was your transition like?
So the thing that I think got me to a point where I transitioned to working for myself is I had always had kind of side jobs going, with doing the freelance design, website, stuff like that. I always had that kind of going, but it was never really pushed. Once I got to a point where I started setting people up with contracts where, hey, I'll be on retainer. I'll be, let's do a year contract of me pushing your marketing for this product release. I worked with a machine shop. We did a contract for a year to brand and market and advertise this product that they were releasing. So for 1 year, I did video marketing. Sometimes once or twice a week, we did a video pushing this product all the way up. And then the day they released the pre-orders, they sold $200,000 worth of pre-orders. So
Jeez.
they were like, yeah, let's do this again. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And that accomplishment was then a marketable piece I could show other people and say, look, this is what we can do.
Yeah,
So there's
portfolio basically of like the
yeah,
photography, like
exactly,
use your success to market yourself and
exactly.
prove that you know what you're doing there,
Yeah,
basically.
because most places need a marketable asset to advertise. Um, if that business doesn't have a marketable asset that looks good, my job is to try to find something that they do or produce that can be marketable, and then take that bit and make it so that it becomes a profit for them. Now, that mentality is the same for entrepreneurs. You as an entrepreneur have to find out what you have that's marketable and how to make people think it's marketable, because people only want to invest in marketable things.
Sure. And with you, I mean, and I feel like again we glossed over the fact that if you want to, if you have time to touch on your experience with, you have a show that you're releasing episodes for. I mean, you work with some local celebrities as far as running shows for them. You do the design for the hot. I mean, you really do keep yourself busy with more than just design and marketing. I mean, what do you mainly attach yourself to? Is it Maffett Motorwerks, like your one go-to, and then everything kind of funnels under there? I mean, how do you
Yeah,
identify market? You want everyone to go to that first and then everything else secondary?
yeah. So Maffett Motorwerks is kind of like my title brand. It feels weird to say that, but that's kind of my title brand. And then underneath Maffett Motorwerks, I have an Amazon Prime show. um, and a web series that is all about the shop and all the work we do in the shop and the design, the car design stuff I do. And, with the car designs, I've been on TV a bunch of times designing cars for TV shows that build cars. So they'll fly me down to Tennessee and I'll design their next season that they're going to build on that TV show. I'll design those cars and then they'll build them that year. And then, throughout the year, they'll send me stuff and I'll draw it and send it back. And um, so that was pretty cool. And that opened a lot of doors for me, meeting people and getting the courage to do the Amazon show and the web series with that. Um, and then kind of snowballed off that. Once I had been creating content and videos for other people, I've created content for myself. That tracked so well that we started partnering with companies. They started sending us products, sending us stuff to review, stuff to work with. Amazon asked us to become an affiliate, so they send us product to review. We write a review, send it back, and then we keep the product. So, but partnerships are a really good branding way to grow. I it's hard because it's not really like an entrepreneur thing, but an affiliate or a influencer. I hate to use that word because it just sounds so cheap. But as an influencer, I partner with brands. They send me their product and we use it on the show, or I create content with that product and send it to that brand so that they can then put it on their media. Glowforge is the most recent partnership that we have here. It's a big CO2 laser that sits on the desktop.
Okay. Yeah, I think you were showing me some stuff you were doing with that last time we'd stopped by. That's pretty cool. Now with you're talking about the following your passion and everything like that. I mean, is there a next step, or do you have it planned out of like, next I want to accomplish this, or is it kind of just taking whatever project kind of presents itself? I mean, what's your overall, like you said, I don't want to get too cliche, but like your 5-10 year plan? I mean, where do you see the direction going? Do you plan on focusing on one niche avenue of everything that you do more than the others?
Well, I mean, if I would to say I had a 5-year plan, it would be to have to buy land, enough land to build a shop on in a studio, so that I could have more cars, more things, more projects going. That sounds weird, but more projects at once.
Yeah.
And eventually that would be the goal. And I have a friend, Andy, that helps me in the shop. He's more the mechanical side of automotive, and I'm more the design and paint and bodywork kind of stuff. So we make up like a perfect team. He always says he makes them run, I make them look good. And so eventually, I mean, I would love to be able to get to a point where the shop is busy enough that he could quit his job and just do that full time.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're exactly like you said. You're looking everything as like partnerships. You're not necessarily saying like, oh, I want X number of employees working this and that. I mean, it seems like you want to keep everything still scaled to the scope where you can be personally involved in all of it and give it the time and attention it needs. You're not trying to make things where they're like self-sufficient. You just have people doing this or that, and it's kind of like on autopilot. Like some people want to scale it so they can step away from the business and it keeps running and they just make the money. Sounds like you want to keep it grow to a certain point, but where it's still manageable and you can still, be involved in every little thing that you possibly want to.
Yeah, and that's from an from an entrepreneurial standpoint, that's almost counterproductive, because the idea of building a spec business is to be hands off, to have people run it for you and you just collect the check. But the automotive world, custom cars, things like that, they do not go to a place because they do the work. They go to a place because of who is doing the work. And I've worked for several shops over the years and have always left just because the who that was doing the work wasn't really um, representative of me. And every person has to think of their name, their person as a brand. It's kind of how I always break it down. And if anything comes in contact that could threaten that brand or bring down, tarnish the brand, you have to make sure you separate yourself from it. So um, when when I opened my shop, I pretty much said I'd never want to get so big that someone else doing something could hurt the brand. So, and it's a passion project, and it's a weird niche market because the hot rod world, the custom cars, especially the old cars, these are like heirlooms. These cars have some of them been in the family as long as the car has been built, 60, 70 years. So they do not hand those keys over unless they trust you.
Absolutely.
So if I had a liaison go talk to them about their car, I would never get a car in here.
Yeah.
They pick up the phone, they talk to me directly. My name's on the company, my name is on everything that comes out. So it keeps that quality control and that connection really tight. But this is not the type of company that you put on autopilot and just collect a check from. There's some shops in the US that do that. Um, and some of them put out amazing cars, but when the owner of the company doesn't get his hands dirty on the cars and is there to talk to every time someone needs them, it travels. Word travels about that. So, um, but I think that mentality of starting something and letting it go is a different type of business, a different type of entrepreneurship. Um, I guess it's because this is more of a trade than a retail business. Um, but any entrepreneur that starts uh, a franchise or something like that they're buying into, the ultimate goal is to cash out.
Yeah.
Um, I hope to do the cars until I retire. Like I hope it gets busy and stays popular enough that I can retire from it and hand the keys to someone else and walk away.
Sure. I mean, that makes total sense, and I love that thought process of, and that kind of goes back to, like we're saying, is some people want to be the Jeff Bezos of the world, and their passion is that the financial gain and figuring out how to make that work, and that's awesome. That's like one view of it, but I identify more, I think, and that's what always makes me want to ask you the questions and pick your brain. Just all the times I text and message you just to see what you think of something that I'm thinking of is, I like that thought of, I see myself and I identify more with the thought of, if I take something on, or if I eventually venture out on my own full time, it's going to be something that is, I stay attached to. I don't necessarily want to hand the keys over to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I know you got kind of a time constraint here. I'm just curious.
No, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Okay. I'm curious when you talk about your portfolio. Is there any one project? It could be as far as like as big as like a big car project, or even as small as just a logo. Is there something that stands out in your mind as like a real good win or success for you that you kind of always look back on with like a good feeling of like, all right, that's like, this is what Maffett Motorwerks, or this is what Daniel Maffett, identifies with, or this is my level of, creation that I want to stick to as like the gold standard.
So when I worked with the shop, I designed a '69 Camaro. Um, design. I sat with the owner of the car, and he had this car once, had it built, it was finished, it was almost ready to take over, and someone stole it out of the shop.
Jeez.
They took the car apart. They never found it. They found pieces, but never got the car back. Um, so he already had it in his mind how he wanted it to look, but it was also dated because it was years ago, almost 20 years that someone had taken it. So in his mind, he still saw that car that was dated from the 90s. So when he sat down with me, he said, this is the color, these are the wheels I'm thinking, this is the stitching in the seats I'm thinking, this is that. So drew it all out on paper, did a full rendering of the car so you could see what it would be, and made all those ideas work together. That car ended up going to Detroit, getting invited to Detroit at the Autorama, which was a huge show, and it won first place in its class at Detroit. And then from there, it got invited to Power Nation TV to be featured on the show. And they wanted to talk with a designer about how he designed it and all that. So I got an interview on the show, and that was probably the coolest part for me, because not only was I was on TV and all that stuff, and it was kind of a snowball from there of where I am now, but it was the first car I designed when I got in the industry.
That's
So
pretty cool.
it was kind of like cemented the fact that, okay, I think I'm supposed to be here. Like, I feel like this is a good thing, and I feel like it couldn't just be luck. It was the first time I kind of felt like, okay, I'm probably good enough to do this. And that's, everyone suffers just self-confidence, but that was kind of like, yeah, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I'm good at this. I don't know. But I don't think they just give everyone this opportunity. This seems really good.
Well, I mean, I think that, again, that speaks to, you being humble. I mean, not to any degree of that same thing, but, I've had like little things here and there where, I've hit a certain point where you almost get like imposter syndrome. Like, it's like, can anyone like stumble across this? Or is like, did I actually like put an extra effort in and accomplish something that's above and beyond what is just generally within everyone's reach, just from my own effort, so it's a pretty rewarding feeling. Now, I know I've said it a couple times when we're there. I'm always amazed at I've just never identified to the same degree with automobiles and hot rods to any degree. Like, very limited knowledge other than like maybe refill my windshield wiper fluid and fill it up with gas and turn it on. Like my knowledge kind of stops there. So like when you talk about how involved these designs are, I mean, it's pretty amazing to me that like you get down to like the stitching and the upholstery of like, I mean, like how small and minute are these details that you're sketching out? Is it dependent on like what the person is asking for, or, is it every single time you go to that degree of customization?
So there's two schools of thought. There's people that want a drawn version of their car just to hang up. Those ones are usually just a sketch drawing of their vehicle that they love. And it's usually, I don't have to do anything. They might say, oh, I like it a little bit lower with some bigger wheels, but this is it, Those are usually pretty simple. Then you have the renderings for builders. The renderings for builders are usually very detailed. There's usually, for any project, there's usually between 10 and 20 renderings. And they get down to like nitty gritty, like what pattern of carpet there is on the floorboards, what type of stitching there is on the headrest versus the back of the seats, and how many inches the bumpers are trimmed and pulled into the body, and every single detail is important. Now, a lot of places use my renderings to get a project funded. So I'll do a drawing of a car with a certain product shown on it. They'll take that rendering and send it to that company and say, hey, look, this is what we're planning. Do you want to be part of it? If so, send us all your stuff. And that's, a company, you have two companies that send a proposal, say, hey, we're building this car, we want you to be part of it. And another company sends it with a rendering. They're going to go with the guy that has the rendering because they think it's more thought out.
Sure. It's almost like a business plan. Like that's that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is because I've literally been spending the last couple of weeks, obviously I haven't made any big announcements, about what's going on, but we've been working on a business plan on the side, and or I have, and so that's the first thing that comes to mind. I was like, oh, that's like a business plan of like, when you first start looking at it, you're like, why do you need that much detail to go into it? But it's almost like, it's leverage to the people that aren't inside your head. You have this vision, this grandiose view of what the end product's going to be, but you need a way to map it out for someone else that's not inside your head to like really respect what degree you're actually going to put into this thing. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's crazy too. Is I was pretty, I think I was well out of college when I realized that not everyone can talk about something and see it in their head. Um, I was like, because I talk about something and I can see it vividly with every detail in my mind, and I didn't realize until after I got married that not everyone can do that. Like my wife, she tells me all the time, I can't see it. You have to draw it, and I'm like, really? Like I can look like we were talking about redesigning the kitchen. So I was telling her, well, I want to do this. I want to push this out here. I want to do that. And she's like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're going to have to draw it for me. And I'm like, I can look at those walls and just see it exactly how I see it in my head.
yeah,
So I legit had to draw a scale model of the kitchen and a plan view and everything so she could see it. And she's like, oh, yeah, I like that. We should do that. And I'm kind of
it,
like, that's what I've been saying for a week.
why can't you get in my head and see it? Well, I know you have your own platform and you obviously have your own following, and it's well above and beyond what I have here as far as scope goes. But I mean, what can we promote for you? What can I add links to? What would you like to drive, people's attention to? Because I think a lot of people could benefit from, just seeing that passion that you have every time you post a video of each project, and catch that entrepreneurial bug, and realize that it's not all just greedy capitalist. I mean, I think you have a lot to offer, and I think you have a lot of motivating views of the world, and projects. And I think more people could be happier with their life if they weren't stuck in a 9 to 5, and they even, like you said, just on the side found, something they're passionate about to work on their own time. I mean, what would you think that people want to tap into? Would it be the show? Would it be, just following you on Instagram, Facebook? I mean, where do you usually send people to get the most information about what you got going on?
So I mean, generally it's my Instagram. Um, it's just Maffett Motorwerks on Instagram. And that, or you could go to maffettmotorwerks.com. That would kind of give you the links to everything. And I have merch and shirts and all kinds of stuff on there too. But there's links on that for the YouTube channel, the Amazon Prime channel, and all that. So that's probably a good place for people to kind of go and see what's going on. We're always up to something. We're talking about going to Vegas for LS Fest West next month, which will be a fun trip too. So we'll be posting all kinds of stuff about that.
Awesome. Well, you are always a surprise of information, and we'll definitely have to have you back on, touch back in after some of future projects, and I'll definitely link everything over. But I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to jump on and chat, dude.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me. It's awesome.